St. George's Cricket Club's past presidents. From 1892 to 1909, John S. Paynter was our first president. He led St. George's Cricket Club to become Bermuda's first fully organized cricket club. From 1909 to 1934, the Honorable W. S. Cooper was president of the St. George's Cricket Club. He is the longest-serving president and was largely responsible for the purchase of the site now known as Wellington Oval, which was formerly owned by the Kennedy estate. From 1934 to 1953, our president was Mr. Collingwood Birch, who next to the Honorable W. S. Cooper has served the longest as president. He saw several important occurrences take place during his term in office, one of which was the change of the cup match dates to accommodate vital cargo to be unloaded in Hamilton Harbor. Our president, from 1953 to 1957, was Mr. Fielding Swan, who was also a cup match captain and led St. George's to a first innings victory in 1926. From 1957 to 1967, our president was Mr. Norwood Brodie Smith. He was also cup match captain in 1947. His father, Arthur C. Brodie Smith, was the first cup match captain for St. George's in 1902. Between 1967 and 1976, Mr. Clive Jack Burgess was president. He was also an outstanding officer of the Bermuda Cricket Board of Control and a member of the MCC in England. From 1976 to 1983, our president was Mr. Alexander Bear Daniels, who was a very hard-working president. You would often find him working tirelessly in and around the club. Under Mr. Daniels' astute leadership, St. George's Cricket Club was able to pay off its mortgage. St. Clair Smith was president from 1983 to 1989. He also served in other executive management positions, including treasurer. Mr. Smith also played in the annual Cup Match Classic as an opening batsman and served on the Bermuda Cricket Board. Mr. Cleveland Fogle was president from 1989 to 1995. He served as secretary of the club from 1966 to 1972 under President Clive Jack Burgess and was the youngest member to hold that position. Mr. Fogle also served as vice president under two former presidents, namely Alexander Daniels from 1976 to 1977 and St. Clair Smith from 1983 to 1989.
I tried to emulate my uncle, he was an individual that he wanted to make sure that everything was done correctly. Before he took over the presidency, he was treasurer for maybe 15 or 20 years. He made sure that everything was done the way it's supposed. He was a no-nonsense person.
Mr. Fogle also played football for the St. George's Colts and was an opening bat for the St. George's cricket team. It was under Mr. Fogle's presidency and leadership at the St. George's Cricket Club and Somerset's Cricket Club they implemented the year-about hosting of the annual Cup Match Classic.
Well, I think one of the most memorable occasions was when we decided to go 1 year about in Cup Match. I think that was one of the best moments that I think that I achieved as president, making it a 1 year affair. Because we realized that the clubs at that time, when the Cup was in St. George's, we had it for a 2 year period, and then the opposing club, which was Somerset, for 2 or 3 years they had nothing up there. So we decided to go year about so that we each could have a bit of money. And of course, when we had it in St. George's, we was giving extra money to Somerset to pay for all of the bills during the Cup Match itself. To me, it wasn't a very difficult decision to make. My committee kind of was very annoyed with me for doing. I think I done it on my own without even consulting my committee. I think it was something that had to be done. I think most of them were against it. I decided and went ahead and done it, and it got through in the final analysis.
Mr. Mansfield Smith was president from 1995 to 1998. We will always remember Mr. Smith as one who dedicated his life to sport and probably worked in every field in organizing sporting activities, including table tennis. Mr. Smith also took pride in preparing the wicket for the St. George's cricket team. Louis De Silva was our president from 1998 to 2002. He also served the club on management as a committee member and as vice president. Mr. De Silva also coached the mini minors and minors football teams for several years.
With the assistant, or not with the assistant, but me assisting him, Noel Smith and I, we coached quite a few junior teams out here. And we had quite a gathering. I thought Noel done a good job, right? He always did. He should be back in the club and doing it still, but he chose to take off and go and not involve himself in the club as much as he used to, right? But I wish he was around again. He was quite a positive influence on this club.
Under Mr. De Silva's presidency, the club extended their southern boundary wall in 2001.
That wall out there, it was always a mystery why it was about 30 feet from the road over to Myers' fence. And we wondered why Myers wasn't using that. And so I inquired about that and had people help me out. And we found out that it belonged to government. So we then negotiated with government and they gave it to us. Before I say anything else, but let me say that was important because at the time, before that wall was pushed out, there was no walking around the whole field, right? You came to this point and that point up there, and you had to stop because you couldn't walk on the southern side of the field. And so we always wanted that, but we could never get it. And with us acquiring that 25 feet, we were able to do that.
He also represented the St. George's Cricket Club and the Bermuda government at the 35th Annual Smithsonian Folklife Festival on the National Mall, Washington, D.C. in July of 2001, where he promoted the premier cultural event, the annual Cup Match Classic.
Okay, that's the annual Smithsonian Folklife Festival, and it was held on the National Mall in Washington. In June 27th to July 8th, it was quite a affair because what they done, they sort of had a mock cup match up there. We had a Somerset team go up there, the regular cup match team who was available, and our regular umpires and everybody. We went up there, and Randy Horton was the one that was commentating on the match. And I can remember, we tried to make it as game-like as possible. I remember at one point, I was running on the field giving money out, and people saying, why is he doing that? And Randolph had to explain to him what was happening. And things of that nature. It was quite a feat. It was nice. The Bermudians were hardly even aware of it, right? And the Americans accepted it and really greatly, they really liked it, and they wanted us to give more, right? I believe if they had their way, they would ask us back again today.
Well, the way things are going presently, I think the president and his committee are doing an excellent job. Financially, I can't say how they're doing because I'm not in a position to know all of that. But from what is being produced here, obviously things are doing very well. And I have to compliment him for what he has done and the time that he has done it.
You take on this position not for your own good, but for the good of the club, right? And good of the membership. And so you have to remember that and realize that if you're not contributing in a positive way, then you should remove yourself.